Hey, what's going on, my friends? Much love. We're out here in a beautiful canyon. This is a canyon that they call Smith Canyon, and we've been exploring these cliff sides looking for ancient dwellings, and what we stumbled across here is absolutely amazing. So you can see there's probably like 30 feet of sandstone above what we have right here. But what we wanted to share with you is a piece of petrified wood that is entrapped underneath the sandstone here. What we believe this shows is evidence of the worldwide flood recorded in the biblical text. Because what you can see is this is an old ancient tree that has been buried up in what was once mud and has now turned to stone, sandstone. So we thought this was amazing. We wanted to share it with you. This is an awesome find, we believe, is evidence and proof of the biblical flood of ancient times recorded in the biblical text. So it's likely this was placed here at the time of the flood when all of this was washed up, and now it's peeking out at us, revealing to us what once happened when the Holy One flooded the earth and everything in it.
Nice.
So you can get a look at this, and you can see that this is beautiful. Piece of petrified wood, very large. And of course it's sparkling really, really beautifully in the sunlight. We got pieces just coming out of this thing. And of course, as I said, 30 feet of sandstone up above our heads. Amazing. Just at our feet we have other very large pieces of this petrified tree from the ancient world.
In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, the 17th day of the month, the same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened.
When that hot searing water burst forth, creating this mid-oceanic ridge that you see like a scar from the day of that global flood, still on the bottom of the ocean floors. It's what separates your continents, creating the map that you see before you now. Walls of sludge, buried and trapped billions of plants and animals, creating the layers of strata that you find underneath the ground. And those plants and biological animals that are in that strata are sorted under there by ecological systems, and the strata itself is sorted by weights and densities. In short, if you were nearby where that hot searing water is coming forth, it's going to vaporize you. And if you were even hundreds of miles from it, it's going to cover you in sludge and a wall of waves. They find fish and dinosaur fossils on every mountain range, including on top of Everest. That's what they find. In fact, the layers of strata underneath the ground where you're finding all of these, you find animals buried in what they call graveyards, meaning collections of the creatures. So it'll be collections of mammoths, collections of dinosaurs, collections of whatever it is. Most of it is seashells and clams and sea life. If you were actually looking at that fossil record, you would come to the conclusion, if you were critically thinking about it, that the entire surface of the ground and all of those layers of strata made of sedimentary rock, a word which actually means rock laid down by water, and those layers of strata that cover the entire surface of the earth. Commonly, they're compared to tree rings, university level. I would point out, as I have repeatedly, that these are not tree rings. It's dirt under there. Accordingly, I would argue that the entire underneath of the ocean is encircled like a seam on a baseball, has a fracture at the bottom of it, within which you have hot searing water still coming out even to this very day. Here is a diagram on the screen of that. If you have large pockets of water underneath the surface of the ground, cavernous pockets of water, the size of oceans underneath the ground, and you get one little hairline fracture that goes down, to one of those big pockets, the surface or the crust of the earth is going to push down so hard with such force, water is going to shoot straight up into space and come down in some areas as freezing ice, burying and trapping animals like your mammoths. Your first mammoth was found, and he's moving his leg like this, and every bone, his bone in his leg is broken while he's standing upright. You have entire ecological systems literally frozen in place. The bones on the back of that little mammoth's body, he has broken bones in there. I humbly submit to your hands, that's because the ice rained down on him so quickly, because when the water goes up into space, it's going to come down as freezing ice in some areas of the planet. On other areas, it's going to be covering these creatures like a wall of sludge, trapping them instantly, which is why many of your dinosaurs are dead in the death pose, where they've got their neck up. They're literally gasping for breath. It's so common they're found in this position, it has a name for it. But the mid-oceanic ridge is at the center in the bottom of your oceans. It's directly between your continents. Your mountain ranges are in the center of those continents, as if they got pushed upwards, and on the edges of the coastlines, where you have a crinkling effect, most massively in the center of the continents. When that water came forth and formed this map that you see before you now, burying and trapping billions of plants, animals, and ecological systems, also creating the oil pockets under the earth today, it laid down that strata, sedimentary rock laid down by water, by weights and densities, in a process in science. In fact, there's only one way to get that strata, a way which can be reproduced. Right now, right at home, you can take different weights and densities of sediments, put them in a jar of water, shake them up and down, and you're going to notice they sort in that jar. That process, identical to this one, is called liquefaction. And within those layers, you're finding pockets of graveyards of dead things. The reason for that, in my view, is because animals herd. If a deer dies in a field, it will not lay there for millions of years and let layers of sediment cover it. And you're also not going to have the earth decide to lay down layers of limestone and then change its mind and say, oh, no, I'm going to do sandstone for a while. Those layers, that strata of sedimentary rock laid down by water, by its actual definition, underneath the ground, are sorted by weights and densities. And inside those layers, you're finding dead creatures, giant dead creatures in many instances. Many of the things in the past were bigger, badder, bolder, more fit than their rinky-dink versions today. You have more creatures in the past. You have all of the same things that you have today. All of the same creatures that you have right now today are in that fossil record of the past. Only many of them are bigger, badder, and bolder, more fit than their versions, their rinky-dink versions today. Only you had more stuff, more creatures. Things are going extinct over time. So your fossil record is a record of losing things. And these big, bad, giant, bold creatures, like, for example, dinosaurs in that fossil record, there's no chain of little bitty things leading to those dinosaurs. They're just there. What I'm stating to you is this, is that there are no transitional fossils. There really are no transitional fossils leading to these enormous creatures that we find buried under the ground, literally mammoth creatures. And more than this, these creatures many of them couldn't even breathe today. If you had one of these animals, the thing's got nostrils the size of a horse. If you had this animal appear before you today, there it is, and it was there, this is what would happen. It would begin to gasp, it would fall over, and it would die. And this is because that creature and larger creatures that you're finding underneath the ground, bigger, badder, bolder things than anything that we have seen today, These creatures need not only an entirely different ecological system, but an entirely different atmosphere, which, by the way, is going to skyrocket the numbers on your carbon dating results. Now, speaking of carbon dating, these behind me are all results, and I'm going to put them up on the screen so you can actually stop the video and look at them if you like. I've put them in numerous of my videos. These were all results on the screens behind me that were censored by United States universities. They're also in the book Pre-Flood. I've published them. These had to be done. These were censored by United States universities. That's how dear the fight was. And you're going to find this a consistent theme within the universities. Foundationally, in fact, some of the people that have written the most to God in a nutshell that get angry are atheists. Imagine you went to a university and you come to find out that something is not just a little bit off here or here on this side or this side, because that's okay. I mean, I'm wrong all the time. If you don't believe that, ask my wife. But that the entire premise of it, I mean, at the point where we're censoring results, so they're finding blood inside of dinosaurs, and the truth is they were finding that for a long time. Just the guys in the universities had no idea about it because they really know very little about in my view, in my humble view, about the subjects they're even talking about. But then when they're confronted with it in their face, all of these, you're going to find that a Triceratops dates in the same range as a mammoth, dates in the same range as a hadrosaur or an allosaur. And the reason for that is, in my view, is that what you're actually getting the dates of when you're doing those carbon tests is that the reason they're all testing the same ages is because they all lived at the same time, including the mammoths. And they're buried in earth, stone, and sludge, mixed in there with sea life, seashells, and clams, globally, as if you had one giant global marine catastrophe that swallowed them in earth and stone, and they're sorted under there by ecological systems. But that you're literally dating and getting samples of it's not just the ecological system, but the atmosphere to facilitate these creatures, which is why you're getting those date ranges on your carbon tests. Date ranges of creatures that looked a little like, here on the screen is an ancient dragonfly. This thing has a 3-foot wingspan. Over here on this side, I've got a little tiny modern dragonfly. Now, to put this in perspective, there he is right back there. To put this in perspective, this thing here, captured in earth and stone, couldn't even fly today. Here on the screen is what an ancient ant looked like. That right there next to it, that's a hummingbird. So this ant, this ancient ant, was the size in the ancient world, the pre-flood world, the cover of this book. This ancient ant right here was the size of a hummingbird. Here is an ancient rhinoceros. So that creature would have been 17 feet tall, by the way. How about ancient beavers? There's a pre-flood. There's an ancient beaver on the screen right here, right next to it. That's a modern beaver on the screen right here. Here's two dinosaurs right here. Were excavated and uncovered. They were in mid-battle with each other. So I doubt that they didn't even have time to look the other way on whatever hit them. So I doubt they were there for millions of years. Whatever covered them up in earth and stone happened fast. Here on the screen, this is a modern rat's skull right there. This right here beside it, this would be an ancient rat. That thing would weigh roughly 13 pounds is what it's estimated at. Right here, I have a modern chimpanzee on the screen back here. Right on this side is an ancient chimpanzee. Now, I'd like to note that the ancient chimpanzee, so this skull cap right here was something once claimed to be called, still claimed, all sorts of claims in your textbooks. Does that skull cap right there look identical to a chimpanzee skull cap? This was a skull cap for Java Man. Now, I'd like to return to this question for just a minute of missing links, because this is a pretty heavy question. This is what's asserted by the highest levels, the ivory towers of higher learning in our world today. And remember, this is the basis and foundation of all of your sciences in this modern age. These are pretty heavy questions, which is why some people could get mad if they find out, wow, we're burying dino data, we're destroying dinosaur tracks. we're modifying ancient skulls to look like monkey people. Let me get to some of that, but I just want to put in the gravity because we're talking about some pretty heavy questions. Who are we? Where do we come from? What happens next? These I find to be some of the most important questions in the world. And I would be the first to state that in any of these materials I've made, I'm probably off a little here, a little there, a little everywhere, quite a bit. But the theme of it, I put a lot of heart in to figure out. I would like you on the other end of the screen to find more. These images behind me come from a variety of different museums. These are claimed missing links. And by the way, you don't just need the missing links going from the monkeys to the people, or they like the word primates to the people, because that makes it better. They used to claim that man evolved from the orangutan, but they had to stop stating that because we began finding ancient orangutans and they were 15 feet tall or more. But these are images of claimed missing links. Go ahead and just take a look at these, and I want to pose the question to you. I want you to take this serious. Just think about it a little bit at the college level. So 3 questions that I think are probably the most important questions you could ever ask in this place. I mean, if you were taking a trip just overseas for 2 weeks, you'd pack your bags, you would plan ahead. But the questions of who are we? Where do we come from? What happens next? And I submit to your hands that all of the major Western institutions, this behind me is the answer. And by the way, you don't just need monkeys becoming men, you also have to answer the question, what led to the monkeys? And that one's actually worse and harder. This is what they're presenting you at the universities. Here is a couple more of them. This is a Lucy display. Here's another one over here. This is real. This is what's actually presented. And I want to pose to your hands, no matter who you are, how many monkeys, or let's use the technical term, how many primates, how many of these things, how many monkey men would we have to breed? How many monkeys would you have to breed of any type that you want before you got people? Even a child would chuckle at that question. You know why? Because it's a foolish question. I would compare what we're teaching with the Bigfoot people, but humbly and respectfully, that would be an insult to the Bigfoot people. But let's hit pause right there. Let's say that on your side of the screen, you say, Trey, some way or another, this has got to be real. It's got to be, no matter what, it just somehow, it just has to have happened. There just simply can't be a God. Besides, how could all the universities, surely they wouldn't teach this if it weren't correct. These are some of the smartest minds in the entire world. Okay, that's a great question. So I'd like to walk that road for a second. And remember our censoring of the carbon dating results. But speaking of missing links and monkey men, why don't we head back to Java Man, right back here on the screen behind me. This is the book Pre-Flood, and I put in there a section on the missing links. I felt like this was important to put together kind of a walkthrough of some of the major ones. So, of course, the first missing link would have been Piltdown Man. Here's Piltdown Man on the screen right here, and here's some of the articles for Piltdown Man. Now, Piltdown Man is considered the first claimed missing link. This lasted from 1912 to 1953, about 40 years. So Piltdown Man, they kept it in a locked box. And what they claimed was, well, if we let the Christians examine it, they would destroy it because they're Christians, and that's what they would do. They would absolutely destroy the evidence. We have the evidence of where we all came from in this locked box. Well, of course, after 40 years, even the science committee, because they found another one, said, well, let's open the box and see what we've got here. And it was a human skull with an orangutan jaw. You remember I told you they were always stating that man evolved from the orangutan. That's what it was. It was the famous Piltdown Man hoax. That's just what it was. So the origin of this begins, the first missing link begins with fraud, making stuff up. Now, Charles Darwin Charles Darwin, this is about 150 years ago. It's often said that he went on a science expedition. Charles Darwin was a spoiled little rich kid, and he was sent on the HMS Beagle. That's not a science expedition. HMS Beagle, that stands for Her Majesty's ship. This was a military vessel. He was a little well-to-do rich kid with a degree in theology. He didn't have a degree in any sciences. He had a degree in theology. He's going to end up telling everybody that they're all monkeys. That was his wisdom. Anyhow, he gets put on that ship by his family. In other words, he was the only guy on the boat without a job, and his family's trying to find something to do with him. This is the hero of the modern sciences. My telling of his story. He ends up there drawing finches. He draws one with and you're going to find these finch drawings of Charles Darwin at all your museums with these monkey men idols back here. This is the theory. In the beginning there was nothing. Nothing exploded, became everything. If you believe that part of it, you believe anything. The mud puddles came to life. The fish got legs and crawled onto the ground. That must be why we find whales in pretty much every desert. You can actually take a tour of them in Egypt, in the Valley of the Whales. You've got them in the Atacama Desert. You've got whales in pretty much every desert in the world. You've also got penguins in deserts, buried in deserts. Isn't that strange? Only these penguins can be 6 feet tall. These penguins can be the size of modern-day basketball players. Isn't that odd? Underneath the ground in deserts. But where were we? Little Charles Darwin, spoiled little Charles Darwin, whose family got him on a boat because they're trying to find something to do with him. They don't want him around the house. The Darwin family had lots of theories. I personally like the one about the moon being spit out of the water, but they don't talk about that one, just littered with theories. These came from Charles. And from the theories of Charles, these would emerge. We need monkey people. Well, Charles drew finches while he was out there on the HMS Beagle. One with a larger beak, one with a smaller beak, one with a middle-sized beak, and one with a thinner beak. And Charles thought to himself, these finches probably all come from a finch family. Where were we before this genius came along? Again, I tell you, he was the only guy, this is from 150 years ago, that you're using today. And this was the only guy on that boat without a job, drawing birds. And he thinks they came from a family of birds. You got to be at least that smart to end up with this. Number 2, because they need another missing link monkey man, would be Nebraska man, number 2. This one was entirely based off of one tooth. So, and there's the famous drawing. They drew him and his wife based on one tooth. You got to be pretty talented to figure out what she looked like from his tooth. The tooth, as you can probably guess, ended up coming from an ancient wild pig. Then we make it over here to Java Man. Now this comes from Eugene Du Bois. This was another hardcore Charles Darwin fan. And his theories, well, here's the bottom line of Eugene Du Bois. They found he was stashing human and animal bones in his house. And this was known, this stuff is published in your textbooks today. Along with Ernest Haeckel's fraud embryo drawings. You had long lines of these. So, and on this page we begin to go through the Neanderthals and the Neanderthal men. Now, the funny thing about Neanderthals, first thing you're going to notice is that they're bigger, badder, more well-built than we are today. But on the early ones, I want you to notice how the nose is missing. This is going to be the case on a lot of them. I'm not going to make any judgment. I'm just going to lay it in your hands to judge what was happening there. Because if you're wanting to put modeling clay on these ancient skeletons and make them look monkey-ish, primate-ish, and remove, why would you move that little bone right there? Let me tell you the reason why. Because, and this was always how they were found. Look at all of the original Neanderthal finds, all missing that little part right there. Why would that be? Why would that be? Until they found too many of them, you can't cut all the nose bones off. Here's why. Primates don't have a nose bone. On a human skull, you have certain features. One of them is a nose bone. Neanderthal skulls have nose bones. They're not primates. In fact, Neanderthal skeletons are bone for bone a human skeleton, only just like everything in that ancient world, they're bigger, bolder, badder than we are today. We are the rinky-dink little tiny version of our ancestors. What I am telling you in all of these materials, whether I'm a little off here and a little off there, and I probably am on a lot of places, but I've got to, and I hope that you find more than I have, whether you start as an atheist or whatever. Well, what I'm telling you, one of the largest letters that we get from atheists is that because nobody likes to be lied to, all of these frauds and hoaxes and lies and modifications of things to get it to come out, and now we're burying carbon dating and this, that, and the other thing. Let me tell you something about carbon dating. Remember these dinosaur results on the screen where I'm blanketly telling you that according to carbon dating, not just any carbon dating, censored carbon dating, woolly mammoths, Triceratops, hadrosaurs, allosaurs, they all date in the same ranges of time frames. Now let me show you this. Dinosaurs are claimed to be 150 to 60 million years old. Oil deposits underneath the ground, how did those get there, by the way? It's said that those are biological material. They're called fossil fuels. Those had to be entire ecological systems swallowed. And to get oil, you need heat and you need intense pressure. This is entire ecological systems and jungles beyond imagination. Here on the screen is a modern horsetail plant trunk. That's about the size of your finger around. Here on the screen is an ancient horsetail plant trunk. They're about this big and grow to 100 feet tall. Oil deposits are claimed to be 112 to 60 million years old. That's entire ecological systems swallowed by earth and stone underneath the ground. I'm telling you and suggesting you that the death of their world is what's lighting yours. Coal, 360 to 290 million years old. Diamonds claim to be 3.3 billion years old. All of them, all of these things, all of them, everything on this list here can be tested and found to have carbon-14 in it. You can do carbon tests on any one of these materials, including diamonds, and find carbon in any one of these things. Now let me read you this. If the whole world, the whole earth, were one big ball of carbon-14, it would have all decayed, be totally gone. If the whole earth were nothing but one ball of carbon-14, it would be totally gone in 1 million years. Yet all dinosaur bones, all oil deposits, all coal deposits, and all diamonds have carbon-14 in them.